Dan's on this end, Dane's on the far end, and it's Katelyn and Jean-Claude in the middle. So, any questions? Who'd like to start? Yes, sir. Stand and give us your name, please.
My name is Amin Hassan. I'm a student of political science and economics here at Windsor in my last year. I'm pretty sure most of you guys saw the videos of Jason Russell and the other executive released by TMZ. So I just wanted to gauge your reaction to those two videos and what you think of those two videos.
Question to a specific panel?
Just the whole panel.
Who wants to take it? Okay.
All right, so the first one that came up, I remember Anna, my friend Anna showed this to me, and she said, oh, they just found out Jason Russell just got naked in San Diego, and started shouting profanities and, acting out masturbatory acts, and it's, of course that really hurts the campaign when the leader starts acting that way, because he was, in the video, you have the two faces of it is Joseph Kony and Jason Russell, kind of the, good and bad, and then it obviously doesn't help when you see someone act that way. I think what they said that it was temporary reactive psychosis that by which he was acting. I don't specifically know what the background of that, but I know that he actually lost control of his own actions. And I can, while I think it, obviously it didn't help, I think people can kind of understand, you see it happen with celebrities a lot, the drug addiction, and you see them spiral down, climb their way back up, and I just think it's that, more than anything else, the fame. The fame that just got to his head, he's relatively unknown, and then suddenly he's world famous, and he, is tired and amongst other things. As for the other video, it showed, I think his name is Jedediah Jenkins, drinking out of a handle of vodka. And it's, to me it's pretty clear that that's a joke. And I think it was made in 2008 when they just won $1 million grant, and they're making I think it was intended to be a private video sent to his coworker saying, oh look, and he's drinking out of it in a way that, to me it's clear that could not be vodka, because he's just pounding back it's obviously water or something. He's saying, I'm going to keep all of this for me, and I think that was intended just to be a joke between coworkers. That's definitely a joke you might make. I don't know if I was in that situation, but I mean, these aren't squeaky clean people either, and it's unfortunate that those kind of things get out. But it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like people are too distracted by those things. So that's my take on this.
This is just coming from an insight from working in the field, and Dane may have had some kind of similar experiences.
I didn't actually.
No, not like that. Nor did I. But when my first experience working in international development was in 2008, and I traveled with a group to a community called Anamabo in Ghana, and we did some school rebuilding projects, and I was only 17 at the time, so I didn't really have a lot of say in what the group was doing necessarily. And I just kind of went along with it, went along for the ride, went along for the experience of culture and all those things. But the group did bring, for instance, all kinds of books and crayons and things like that aren't necessarily the most sustainable. And so a couple years later, when I started studying development and I got into some of these topics and started questioning what I was doing, I had a really, really difficult time. And it's the same thing happened after this past summer, where I question a lot of the things that I do with my organization, and there are different organizations I support, and sometimes it becomes really difficult. And I've only been working with this organization for maybe a year and a half. And with Jason Russell, I really do think that he's experienced some of that harsh backlash of maybe he questioned these things a little bit before, but because the entire world was being so critical of what he was doing, forced him to question it even harder, and that's really difficult to deal with if you've devoted, your life to working in the field, let alone for me or other people who may have worked in development, starting to question those things for a few months. Like it's an extremely difficult process, and I can see why it may manifest that way in that outburst.
Anybody else?
Just really quickly, not to mention his son is in the video as well. So you get your family's kind of in the line of fire for all the people that are against it. So that's just another thing.
Here I go. I have a question. I believe 2 or 3 of you mentioned the term night community. Okay, what is that? Can you explain that?
Yeah, for sure. Basically, let me just take a look at the time period here. When the LRA was really at its peak in Northern Uganda, the Museveni government felt the need to do something about the communities that were being attacked, and they decided to create internally displaced persons camps in the north for these individuals to stay in, which definitely was not the best solution. It was a bit of a band-aid solution, and wasn't that effective, and it resulted in thousands upon thousands of kids having to commute from their homes in the IDP camps because they weren't safe to safe places, which could have been group buildings, like different buildings in the community to sleep, because they simply weren't safe in the IDP camps. They were at risk of abduction, not only by the LRA, but also at risk of being abused by the military who were there, who were supposed to be protecting them. So simply, people weren't safe. It was mostly young kids, so they had to commute overnight to these local safe centers in order to be safe. And that was what the Invisible Children and Gulu Walk and War Child and all kinds of other organizations worked together to end night commuting. Do you want to
Thank you. Actually, yeah, and with regards to night commuting, I actually found out about the issues in Northern Uganda through the initial video of the Invisible Children, and they highlight a lot of the issues about night commuting. And while I was teaching down there, every day I would pass by one of the hospitals there, and that was actually one of the areas where a lot of the kids night commuted, and it was anywhere from a 10 to maybe a 20-kilometer walk at night, where kids had to literally sleep like sardines just to avoid being kidnapped. And I mean, the conditions were, it was a huge issue and just happening for the longest time, and nothing was happening about it.
Thanks, Dane. Yes, sir. Please stand and identify yourself if you would.
Yeah, my name is Pedro Belanzar. I come from a country which is, has an armed conflict. I haven't seen the movie, but I have seen your comments and, different opinions regarding the problem with the film. One thing that is obviously common is like this film is like designed to divert the issue or divert the youth from trying to resolve the problems that Canadians face or the relationship between Canada, United States, and other countries with Africa or Latin America for that matter. So in that, I'm in a complete agreement for one of the speakers here. At the same time, I noticed some other fallacy being created here. It's the whole issue of NGOism, in which, instead of, the youth also should have as an alternative to go to NGOs, because NGOs are going to be solving the problem of Africa or the problems of various countries. While most of these NGOs in the international arena, they are controlled by the same states who are plundering Africa and Latin America, like for example the Canadian state or the American state are doing that in various other countries. I also take issue on the issue for Canadians, I think that they should oppose the plunder of Africa and the invasions under humanitarian pretexts to Africa or Asia or Middle East or anywhere in the world. I also take an issue and one little comment at the introduction there in which you said guerrillas. I trying to inform you that, there is a big difference in between people fighting for liberation and death squads. Death squads or paramilitaries are other people. So then you cannot run them all together and say these are guerrillas or rebels, as the new term is being introduced internationally to attack the people who are fighting for liberation. I'm not defending Kony or whatever, but I'm saying that is the general trend. So that's part also that creates a little bit of confusion that should be clarified. So I agree with you, and which you say that Canadians should find their own solutions. But their own solutions is regarding to opposition to war, aggression, and plunder of all these countries. And Canadians should unite on that and don't get into the diversion of having these films. So that's my point.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. We appreciate it. Thank you. Jean-Claude, you have the microphone?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to comment on that a little bit. Just like you said, you addressed about the NGOs and the fact that some NGOs actually go in there, but representing the countries that they came from, for example, the USA or Canada. I totally agree with you, just like I say, Africa's been going through this since the 1960s, and if you think about this, that's like over 50 or 50-something years ago, and yeah, these issues have been going on, and NGOs and money and things like that have been sent to Africa. But just like I say, most of the funds that are given to Africa most of the times end up in hands of oppressive governments and things like that. And just like you said again, these NGOs are representatives of most governments. I believe that there are NGOs which are really doing a great job of things like that, but for me, myself, as an African speaking, as a person who has been there and as a person who has lived as a refugee in Uganda, I believe that Africans have reached to a point whereby NGOs somehow, forgive me for this, but somehow have kind of dominated, and for me I believe that they've kind of prevented a little bit on their ways to development. I believe that NGOs sometimes have acted as prevention because most of these NGOs don't view the African conflict in the African perspective. They view these problems in the Western perspectives. So it's a little bit hard to understand. For example, let's say there is an NGO which is going to Kenya to stop poverty, or to Ethiopia to stop, or Somalia to stop hunger or something like that. For them, they're going to come with a view, a Western perspective of poverty, saying, you know what, if you live below minimum wage a little bit, or you're poor. But in the African perspective, for example, a man who earns $100, I'm just giving an example, a man who earns $100 and then manages to send his kid to school, even if it's a crappy school, but as long as the kid goes to school, a kid grows up and becomes somebody, even if he works in a firm somewhere, as long as he's earning money for him, that might be a good life. But when an NGO comes from, let's say, Canada, where, come on, $100, that's crap, For them, it doesn't make any sense. But just like you say, there is a little bit division between the Western perspective and the African perspective. And I believe that for Africa to develop, or for Africa to become peaceful or something like that, there needs to be a trend where NGOs or any organization is going to step up, is going to step away and say, you know what, let's hear what they have to say. And I believe, just like we are addressing the Kony 2012, this is what has been ignored, and this is why most Ugandans are actually reacting a little bit furiously, because they believe they did not give us a chance to talk. Kony 2012 was a Western perspective of African problems, a Western perspective of the Northern Uganda problem. That's why we actually had false information provided. And I believe this is not only for regarding Kony, it's regarding a lot of African issues. The bad thing is that we don't listen to them. Africans have been screaming for quite a long time. They don't listen to them, and that's why maybe we even had the genocide happening because the international community did not listen. They were waiting for the West to act, and that's a huge problem. Just like you say, NGOs, as sad as it might be, I'm in social justice, but I believe that they have a role to play in that. And as long as they don't listen to what the Africans have to say, as long as they don't listen to what the Africans are suggesting, as long as they implement their own Western perspective of African problems, 6 years from now, we're going to talk about the same issues. Yeah. So, just.
Yes, in the back.
My name is Margaret Villamazar, and I'm with the Windsor Peace Coalition. I'm not a student here, but we do track very carefully in our coalition what Canada's doing, particularly in contemporary days. Canada and the U.S. have a very deliberate and a very particular role in the world, which does, I think, involve taking action that's becoming more and more clearly in violation of the United Nations Charter, which says that countries do not have the right to simply invade or to interfere in other countries and to stage hunt downs, regime changes, or whatever. This video, I think, I was a little bit surprised that there didn't seem to be anybody who took a real serious issue with the bottom line of this video. In my understanding of what was said, there was a lot about what techniques, whether it wasn't really directed at Canadians in a valid way or whatever. I saw that. But it's calling the bottom line for the U.S. to stay there, to be the saviors of African people again. To me, it's not very sophisticated, I don't think, to suggest that that's just a call for another colonial episode, and I don't think maybe it's so easy for the U.S. and the NATO countries around it that work with it to just come out and do what they did in Afghanistan and Iraq. Those have been abominable failures. They've been an embarrassment to them. They're not what they wanted them to be. So more and more, they have to use tricks. They have to use schemes. They have to say it's for human rights. They have to say they're protecting civilians from the killers that their own governments can't protect them from. And I very much feel that this slick U.S., video by a group that I don't really know much about. I heard a few things, but I don't want to make that the issue. The bottom line is another U.S. intervention in Africa. And since when has the U.S. or Britain or France or Canada now been the savior of peoples of Africa, Asia, Latin America? We have enough trouble trying to control what happens in our own country, and the U.S. people do too. And the youth, I think they should put their eyes on and bring up to the criminal court, if they want to, their own leaders who are responsible for invading other countries, destroying a country like Libya in the name of protecting humanity. It's against the basic charter of the United Nations. So our coalition has worked hard to try and work through these things so people can see through these high-sounding ideas that are used to launch the wars that are being launched these days, the interventions. And when someone came up to me at work the day after the video was launched, asked if I'd heard about it, if I'd heard about Kony, I said, I think Kony and Lord's Resistance Army I've heard, but I said, what's the bottom line? She wasn't sure. They were calling for some action internationally. I said, the last couple of years, the U.S. has mounted a special whole African command of its military to take what it calls responsibility of the whole sphere of Africa. No country in Africa yet has allowed that command to be set up in their own soil as the base, because people know what that means. So I would think a lot of attention should be paid to the essence of what's being called, not all the trappings or the invisible kids or Kony. None of that. It's something bigger.
Thank you, Margaret, very much. Yes.
My name is Kennedy Elmi. I'm a first-year political science student here at the University of Windsor. I just have a couple of concerns and comments about the whole Kony 2012 and all that stuff. The first thing I want to comment on is the actual content of the video, which I think was kind of glossed over. I found it, to be honest, very patronizing to the Ugandan people. I'm not Ugandan myself, but my family's from Somalia. I'm a first-generation immigrant, and I know that kind of content in the video was made about Somalia. I'd be pretty mad, because it shows Uganda as helpless, needing America to save them. It was borderline, I'm not going to say as far as disgusting, but I don't agree with the content of the video. Second thing is, what the last commentator was stating was American presence within Uganda something that can absolutely not happen. I mean, the last time America stuck their nose in Africa myself arrogant or something, but I have friends who are Palestinians who are scared about their, if one day they're going to hear their family member die, a phone call. I have friends from Iraq who lost family members. I have friends who are Libyan and are scared for their family members. I know things that are going around in the world right now. And the whole Kony thing, a conflict that has been ended for 6 years. I'm seriously supposed to put effort into that when there's so much more going on in the world right now. Another thing that the Kony 2012 video that I'm starting to see online when I'm arguing with people is that there's the argument when people argue with me, their argument is, at least we're doing something. At least we're doing something. We're putting our pictures on Facebook as Kony 2012. We're putting a couple of posters up. We're doing something, right? No. To be honest, helping the invisible children right now with this Kony 2012 thing I think is more damaging to Uganda than me doing nothing for them. And to watch one video and suddenly believe that you're some kind of expert. I don't consider myself an expert. But to watch one video and to consider yourself some kind of expert and to regurgitate every fact in the video that has been criticized of making up facts or using facts to their advantage, I'm not impressed with this whole 2012 thing.
Identify yourself if you would, please.
And I'm a second year English Literature and Psychology major. And what I just wanted to point out was initially when I watched the video, I actually read some arguments against it before I watched it, so I watched it with a critical eye. Although even though I watched it with a critical eye, I found it really exciting to take part in this movement because it's a new movement that's never been done, you know. And I really love to be active. I really love to help, and I thought, like, you know, it had a humanitarian air to it. But when I further researched, I found that there might be a political agenda rather than a humanitarian one. And I think the danger of it is that it is put under that humanitarian, we're going to help. So I guess my biggest question is, and with the critiques that people are saying that, you know, this is the first time Uganda is experiencing some peace, and we don't want to create, and like the American military going in might cause more bloodshed, it might cause more military action. My biggest question is, will it cause more harm than good? And the fact that so many people are supporting this movement and are urging the American government to go into Uganda, if they do anything that is bad, and if they do cause more bloodshed, we can't really blame them because we urge them to go do that. And I guess we have to see that in supporting it, are we actually doing the opposite of what we're trying to do, which is we're trying to help. And I just see that, like, a very simple argument that was made was that over the years, the American government hasn't really gone into a country and helped people, you know? And it's sort of a trend that's been going on with Saddam Hussein, with Osama bin Laden. It's a bad guy that needs to be taken out, but in the process of, you know, of ending terror, they created a reign of terror, you know? They killed people in the process, innocent civilians. And I'm not saying that these people don't need to get out, but are we actually asking the right people to get them out? And I really love that she mentioned the Canadians should do something themselves, you know? And there are other organizations that are helping this cause. And I see that we can do things rather than urge the American government. We can do things ourselves by donating to other organizations and everything. And I found it really interesting with the Jason Russell case, how he reacted and how he, and I guess his reactive psychosis to me was that maybe initially he wanted to do something humanitarian, but because he's behind this and he sees more than we do, he might have saw that maybe it could cause more harm than good, and it could cause bloodshed, and that was his reaction. Like, I don't think anybody wants to be the cause of that, and he's such, you know, he urged this campaign so much that I guess he got a little scared, in my opinion. So just my question is, can we cause more harm than good? Okay, I want to answer your question, and I want to just address a couple of the points that have been said. Number one, yes, absolutely more harm than good can be caused. And I just want to qualify what I guess a little bit more what I mean by carving out our own means of Canadian activism on development issues. I am for carving out a means that is political, so that is encouraging our government to get out to stop our mining companies from exploiting Congo and exploiting others, to encourage the American government not to intervene in a conflict that is far beyond the complexities of what the American military has done or understands or knows. I do encourage us to find organizations, if we do want to support NGO organizations that are doing the most sustainable development possible, and I brought this up before, but I believe that War Child Canada is one of them, and the reason I support this organization, for instance, over Invisible Children, is that it's focused on post-conflict rebuilding in partnership with people on the ground in 12 different countries who are experiencing conflict in the world. There's a difference between partnership and employment. Invisible Children has gone into Northern Uganda, and whether they're doing positive or negative things, they employ local people, which is better than just employing Westerners and putting them there, but they still employ local people on their own agenda. War Child Canada and a few others, like Engineers Without Borders, goes into a country and works with local people in partnership, exchanging ideas, not enforcing an agenda. So those are the types of organizations that I suggest if you want to support NGOs. It's fine if you don't. It's fine if you don't believe in the NGO as a business, which is definitely a possibility. It's fine if you don't want to support that, to quote Linda Pullman's book, Crisis Caravan. But if you do want to support NGOs, to seek out the ones that are doing post-conflict work, not intervention, the ones that are promoting peace, not promoting more war, the ones that are working in partnership with local people, then that's the best ones. But the reality is we have to seek those out, because they're not putting a significant amount of their budget into putting their goals in our face in a big movie. So does that sort of answer?
I have a question here first, and then.
So my question here is that, how do you tell the story of the people in developmental countries like Africa, like a continent, and not make someone else the hero? So how do you tell the story of the people? How do you show what's happening?
I can pass this around, but my simple answer is don't put Westerners in the video. Simply get the story and allow people to tell the story themselves.
Yeah, I think she just gave a good point, but for me, the concern is not about only having Westerners in the video, Obviously, Westerners are people too, They're people, so they have the right to say what they see, what they experience. But for me, just like I said, is I think it's just expanding on her point, is that, let them say something, let their voices be heard, let them say something. Because I believe there is a similar issue going on in Darfur right now. It has been going on for quite a long time. Just like I said, I refer to Tibet, I refer to Palestine. These things are going on, and I believe that as much as you might get out this story or something like that, if people actually shout, for me as an African, I don't, like I say, I'm not against NGOs, but people are being tired of NGOs. People have said, you know what, we have had enough. Because even if you guys come, even if we have 5,000 NGOs here, it's going to end up the same thing. So what we want is what? Our voice is being heard. And just like I say, I also support the cause of the Kony 2012, but if only they spread the right, message, if only they make the people of South Sudan being heard, if only they make the child soldiers actually speak out and say, you know what, this is what is happening to us. It's only if all these Nokia and other companies actually are exposed to the world and say, you know what? For you guys to have a cell phone, okay? For your parents to get in contact with you, for your boyfriend to get in contact with you, I have to lose my girlfriend because I'm the one who's gonna go down into the mine, get out the gold with like whatever like material that I have to get with my own hands, and sometimes they don't have medicine. People who actually getting your cell phones or the raw materials to make your cell phones, these are young kids, they are separated from their parents, just like I addressed before. For them, for you guys, or for myself, because I love my laptop, for myself to Skype with my mom, a young kid, a 6-year-old kid, has to be separated from his or her mom so that I can have a good connection with my mom. You know what I mean? Do you get me? Like, let this message spread around the world. That's the only way that they can become heroes. And we can also play part in it as Canadians. We can help with that. Invisible Children can actually be a great, great resource, just like I said. If this video could go viral, now imagine they make another video that addresses the Palestinian issue right now and make it viral like that. I mean, all of us will be crediting Invisible Children. So it's not like us opting out and saying, you know what, we can't contribute, leave it to Africans. All I'm trying to say is that let their voices be heard and let us play something. And that's like I said, Invisible Children can make a great movie, great, like realistic movie addressing other issues.
And 3 questions kind of in line. You're number 3, but I see your hand there, so we'll get to you. Forgive me for pointing, but please stand and identify.
What else can you do? I'm Naomi. Hi. And I'm new to Windsor, so sort of take that for what it's worth. I'm a social worker. I recently went back for my PhD at the U. And, you know, I think that after having done a lot of work in Haiti for many years, there's a certain prestige to being an international worker. I'm not entirely sure why or how that happens, but you come back and like you get this kind of street cred from having been somewhere. You know, like my friends call me Mohammad Nomi, right? And you know that's all very cute. But I think part of what happened to Jason Russell, maybe, you know, after having done mental health crisis, and part of what happens with that tension when we go places and come back places is this lack of internal consistency. And so we're talking about letting Africans have their voices, letting this group have their voice, letting that group have their voice. Windsor has the 2nd largest percentage of immigrants in Ontario, and one of the largest percentage of immigrants in the country. Where are we when we listen to the immigrants and refugees in the city? What happens in these high schools where kids are feeling ostracized, marginalized, not parts of their communities? You know, that's great. That's really great. Like, let's take a look at these Ugandan children and what they're going through. Then they come to Canada. Then what happens? And that's not to say that we don't have a duty to think about what's going on and to support communities that are going on. But when we look at what's happening to our immigrants and refugees here, even specifically from those communities, if you particularly feel like your heart is called to Uganda, say, there are hundreds of thousands of them right here. So let's start somewhere. And that is somewhere, I think, especially for our young people, because Invisible Children, you know, has chosen this high school thing to do. That's somewhere to start. And it's amazing, and it's what we do, right? We can't see the forest from the trees. And there's the standard debate around, well, there's homelessness here, there's problems here, why are we going over there? Okay, fine, that's sort of a different conversation. But there are immigrants and refugees from those communities right here. And we can start there in our own way, without money, without anything, by just introducing ourselves and saying hello. And I think somehow that gets missed somewhere, which is unfortunate.
No, actually, I have an interesting personal connection to this issue. When I came back from Ghana over those few years, like I really had no intention of doing development work again in the near future, and I wasn't thinking about that. But when I was working with the Canadian advocacy side with like War Child on our campus, I guess CBC got a hold of an event that we were doing, and a friend of mine brought his friend, who is a Congolese refugee in Windsor, to our event because he heard we were doing outreach about Congo, and he wanted to know what we were saying, right? So that was that initial introduction. We formed a friendship with our families, and he was the one who said, I'm trying to start an organization to help my home community. Do you think you could help us out? And I said, sure. And that was our grassroots movement, and that's our organization, Kujali Congo. That's exactly how it started. Everything comes from him. He is the best contact I ever had to go to Congo, because he helped us get across borders, and he had all the contacts to call and all the people to call, and I mean that's how our group started. So I definitely agree with you that striking up a conversation with immigrant refugee communities here, you never know where that'll lead. You never know what kind of stories we can hear that way.
But I think the point is, it doesn't have to lead anywhere.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
It's just about being a human and making a human connection to the people in our communities. And when we look at our immigrants and refugees as opportunities or as, victims, that's not so helpful either, right? So it's about how we connect total and how we take opportunities to connect to each other, right?
Good, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Travis, and I come from a communications media background, so a lot of how I've been viewing this has been sort of from that. And one of the things I find really interesting is you have this sort of notion of worthy and unworthy causes, or worthy and unworthy activism, and how this Kony 2012 campaign has exploded, and it's been picked up by the mainstream media, it's been picked up by everybody, and how it's sort of become this worthy activism. Like, it's okay within the mainstream to be against Kony because he's this obviously evil person, and he really is. But it's just interesting that there are so many activist ideals that are considered non-worthy or unworthy, and I wonder a lot of times too, because the history of Kony and the history of the LRA comes from this, like you guys alluded to, the problems in Northern Uganda, and how Kony became this sort of anti-capitalist, anti-American sort of force. Like that's actually how the LRA started, as a rebel group that was going to try and change this sort of neoliberal capitalist, neo-colonial thing. So he's almost an acceptable villain because, I mean, yeah, he is a villain. He's a horrible person. He does all these terrible things, but he's almost an acceptable villain as well because he's also, this anti-capitalist, anti-American person, not unlike Osama bin Laden or Saddam Hussein in a lot of ways. So it's interesting if you have someone who's just equally as evil, doing just as terrible things, but they happen to be pro-capitalist or pro-American, they're ignored or they're cooperated with or whatever, and right within Congo and Uganda, there are these people. There, for instance, are the militaries and the states of those governments that are very allied with America or pro-American and pro-capitalist. And even though they may be doing a lot of the same horrible things that Kony and the LRA do, and they do, sometimes they do worse, it's not considered worthy activism. We don't need to fight that cause because, hey, at the end of the day, they're pro-American, and that's all right. So I just want to know, I don't know if it's not really a question, but just kind of get your thoughts on that sort of that worthy, unworthy activism kind of thing.
If I might, forgive me, I'm not a panelist, but I have a personal interest in this. Because I've worked in the media now for 36 years and with the CBC for 28. And I can assure you that to some media outlets, they would look at the way this exploded on the internet. And some producers, some assignment editors would look at that and say, gee, with so many people tuned in to that video, there's a real opportunity for us to build ratings here. It has nothing to do with Auschwitz in many, many cases.
Exactly. Yeah.
It has everything to do with, bums in seats, or eyes on the TV, or ears on the radio, or eyes on the newspaper. Distribution numbers, ad rates go up.
And like I said, the reason that it becomes acceptable, the reason that's an okay cause to sort of attach their bandwagon to, I would argue, is partially because it is, this Kony guy also happens to be, on top of his horrible human rights abuses, happens to also be this anti-American, anti-capitalist sort of thing. It helps. And certainly, like, CBC is a lot better than most of it.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. That's for you to say, not for me, but it's an easy story for a lot of media to tell because there's a bad guy, right? We all like protagonists and antagonists in the stories that we watch or read, things like that. So this one's a classic. It's an interesting study. Any of you want to comment on that, by the way?
If I could just tap into yours and connect it back to your hero point, is that I think what this campaign did really well is capture that media attention in that way. So at least they kind of tapped into that power that seemed like a lot of other organizations couldn't get a hold of, or it just hasn't happened before. So, and then to get back to making it, I'm not having a hero, I think the big part, you have in the video, you throw in a Mumford & Sons song, Flux Pavilion, and it sounds really, it's cool now. But I think if you bridge the culture a little bit more and you look about, if you look into what, people in Uganda are like, the music that we're listening to, and just bridge the culture, the media, and the technology a bit more, then the other things will come afterwards.
I'm going to get one back here first. Then there's one here. We'll get right to you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Obina Moreno. I'm doing my honors in computer science. My question is this. During the 90s when Kony was really doing what he was doing, there was nobody there. All these organizations there was no Kony 2012 campaign. It was just a recent thing, which started like a few months back. And then the question now is, why didn't the Western countries look at Uganda then when all they had was fish? Is it because they now have oil that people are now looking at Uganda? Because we discovered oil in Uganda in 2005. And since then in 2011, November to be precise, the government still having issues with their legislation in terms of oil and how in terms of oil contracts. And they decided to halt all the oil contracts in 2011. So is this because of the oil, or do they actually care about those invisible children? That's the question.
Dane, you want to deal with that one?
Sorry, and so the exact question is whether they, whether...
Do you guys care about the children, or is it all about the oil?
Well, me personally,
I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about
yeah.
I think you're talking about
Yeah.
the global community.
Yeah.
Or the,
You know what, that's a really hard question to answer, because I mean, I kind of, because I struggle with that all the time. I remember as soon as the U.S. Parliament passed the LRA disarmament bill, I remember a couple months before reading Uganda discovered oil, and I was really skeptical. I mean, it's, I'm an idealist, but I mean, like, you have to be rational too. I mean, there's that to consider. I mean, I do know that there are a lot of groups and who are working altruistically for the benefit of the communities that were devastated as a result of the war. But on the other side, I'm sure there are probably people who want to profit. Like after any time there's a conflict or some kind of natural disaster or some kind of need, there are always people who will try and profit off that, which is a shame, and I think that's the reality sometimes. Oh, sorry.
So would you say the campaign is to profit?
Oh, I would say the campaign most likely is not to profit. Well, because I believe they were trying to, the group made the movie, I think, in 2003, and they actually wanted to film what was happening in Sudan. That was the original purpose of the three guys going to film it. And when they were in the Central East Africa there, they were in Uganda, and they kind of stumbled upon these night commuters, and then they asked more about it, and then they found out, and they were very much in shock, and so then they came back and they made this movie, and so I guess their original intentions, yeah, well, because their original, and I'm sure they're still very well intentioned, but they were trying to get international involvement before oil was discovered, because I believe they had made the movie in about 2003, 2004, and oil was discovered. Was it 2005 or was it prior? I'm not exactly too sure.
If you watch the video properly, they used two different cameras. The first camera used on ground in Uganda wasn't HD, but then the one that had the footage of the man and his child, and then the other fancy stuff was HD. So that means the original video was altruistic, right? Then the second one, what was the reason behind it?
I mean, I have no affiliation with that, with the individual children. I just went because I found an opportunity to volunteer teaching down there. So I can't speak on behalf of the organization, but I mean, ideally, the intentions are just to
going to do any practical thing to help just the awareness and raising?
Well, they're actually down there, and then they do have a lot of micro finance like projects. They actually have this one group called Men, and they actually employ former child soldiers who are female, who often become ostracized in the community as bushwhackers, and they kind of employ them in this micro development program, making various things and then selling them fair trade. So they do have some developmental programs, but I believe their main goal is cinematography and using that to create awareness.
So one more.
Yeah.
For John. Jean-Claude, you still have friends in Uganda, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Most of them.
When you get to contact them, when you talk to them, is there any change since the new campaign?
Well, since
Is there any
the
positive change?
2012.
Yeah.
Well, just like I will have to address is that Uganda is a very small country, all right? And what I was actually really a little bit critical about this video is that the things makes Uganda seem as like this country probably evolved. But like to be specific, Uganda is one of the, at least like for the past 3 years, was one of the African countries which was actually experiencing a high rate of economic boom. So this problem actually is in the northern Uganda, or was in the northern Uganda, okay? So in the central, like where I grew up in Kampala, just like I say, the main threat was there when it was 2000, okay? That's when we felt a little bit insecure. But as we're growing up, Kony became a little bit of like, just like I say, his story still lives on. His legacy still lives on. But as a threat, no. My father used to work in northern Uganda. In 2000, traveling to northern Uganda was a little bit like, you'll be like, are you out of your mind? They're gonna kill you. But right now, going to northern Uganda is like, you travel like always, you go. And actually, Southern Sudan is becoming one of Uganda's main trade partners. Because of what? There is no longer LRA, because to go to Southern Uganda, you have to cross Gulu, which was like Kony's powerhouse, you know. So right now, Uganda is, Southern Sudan is one of the main importers of Ugandan goods. So to be specific, Kony is now legacy. Just like you say, I stress it in my points is that people have reason to doubt, to be a little bit like suspicious, to bring all these conspiracy theories saying, you know what, I think the US is behind this. They have sort of reason. But for me, what I'm trying to say is that I don't think we are there yet. We're not really sure. Just like they announced, there is coming like, there'll be like a second part of the video. Let's just sit back and watch. But like for me, what I really hope that people get from this presentation is that now we're critical. Now we know that what we're dealing with, okay? We're gonna watch with open eyes and see what's gonna happen next, okay? But like, I think it's a little bit too early to just say, you know what? USA is after the oil. I'm also aware of the oil, and it's not only in Uganda. You know, Sudan like is one of the main, has one of the biggest oil reserves. Congo, like, I mean, you have a lot of resources there. So many people are saying that USA is trying to enter there to influence the Congolese policy, whatever. A lot of things being brought up. Just like I said again, others have called this like a new Iron Curtain because China is having a high, like one of the highest influence in African economy these days. You know, China like is consuming about like 40% of Congolese exports. So if I was USA and I wanted some materials from Congo, I'll be a little bit, you know what? These people are stealing my market. So you have a lot of reasons. A lot of Africans are really, really, they're questioning what's going on. But I think it's too soon for us to say that. Let's just watch. And hopefully, myself, I'm hoping that this video was for humanitarian issues. But just like I said, it was a little bit late. It was a little bit late because Kony has been dealt with. I don't think he's arrested yet, but the African governments are doing something. The Ugandan government should get a lot of credit for what he did. So, yeah, you have like reason, like you have a great point to make, but let's just watch. I think the future is going to tell if we're really right or not.
Thank you.
And just one thing that's a really interesting point to note to your question about whether Invisible Children is doing good things or whether they're effective. If the LRA is out of Uganda, the Invisible Children knows that, and they've also implemented programs in Congo. an early warning detection system. So they put up these towers to send radio signals to tell people in the community when an attack has happened in a nearby village so that people know if it's coming to them. I have reason to be very critical if this system is actually working in Congo, because they have, the community they're in, the Dambu territory, has had 13 new LRA attacks since March 6th, which is one day after this video was released. I'm not saying that there's a definite correlation, but there is going to be some sort of backlash from the LRA in seeing all this, and why aren't there early detection systems working in that territory?
Why is that report?
We have time for one more question. And it's right here.
It's more of a comment, actually, and I'm really sympathetic with what Jean-Claude said about what's going on in the Congo. I've traveled around the world and visited many countries, and not in Africa. But I know, and I think, but he is right to be very wary of having the British, the Yankees, or the Chinese come in to develop what he's doing. And I know of an example of a country that from 1970 on was able to develop and optimize the resources that it has. That country was Oman, which is along the east coast of Saudi Arabia. In 1950s, it had the most backward government in the world. It was ruled by a sultan who lived in a palace. There was one road that was between the palace and the hospital. If you had glaucoma, Allah meant that you shouldn't see. And what happened was his third wife sent off her son to England for education, which meant he could never come back. When he was young, he went through British schools, went through Sandhurst Military Academy. In 1970, he came back, deposed with 35 British Marines or something, and deposed his father. And all through that time, tourists weren't allowed in Oman, or foreigners were basically excluded. The Sultan kept that system, but you could come in on a 2-year work contract. The first thing he did was set up Omani Petroleum. And he hired people from Gulf, Shell, Exxon, all over the world. They came in, they set up Omani Petroleum, but everything was owned by the Sultan. He brought in doctors from Europe and Canada, US. He brought in civil engineers. He established, the whole country was basically illiterate, so he started teaching all the 6-year-olds how to write and read and write. And finally, the first time I visited there, these people were in grade 12, so he set up a university. And I visited there because my wife's best friend became the registrar of the university. But he developed the whole country that way. And it's the most pleasant country to live in. It has a very low crime rate. He's maximizing using the exports to bring in all the stuff that countries like lesser developed countries need. But only one foreigner was ever allowed to gain citizenship there, and that was a doctor who actually was the doctor for the royal family. Now the royal family is about 5,000 people. But anyway, this country has succeeded marvelously, and it's the safest and one of the nicest places in the world. It's very modern now. I don't know how, in the chaos that I've read about the Congo, I don't know how that could be employed, because my understanding of the Congo is basically there really is not a functioning government. I'm curious to know which mines were using 6-year-olds, but if you want to trade and bring in pharmaceuticals and stuff and hospital supplies, you have to export. But you need one government to do this. And unfortunately, you can't borrow the Sultan. But you have to be very cautious about bringing in any of the Chinese or Americans or British. And it's my understanding that there are mines there that are set up by, I don't know if Canadians were involved, but now it's all overrun by mercenaries, and they're shipping the, digging out the ore and sending it off to somewhere else. So it really requires that somehow you get some kind of government body there. And it's not going to be solved by NGOs doing nice things for people. Somehow it has to be effectively set up an economic system that functions.
Thank you, appreciate it. It's just about time to wrap it up, but Dana, you were scribbling wildly there about 5 minutes ago. Did you have something that you wanted to get out?
So,
I don't want to leave anything unsaid. If you have something that you feel is important.
yeah, so my name is Sowad. I'm a fourth-year engineering student. I have this question about Canadian budget. So now that you know that Harper government has got money for foreign aid, how do you feel that it affects us towards international development, Canadian activism, and how it portrays us to the world?
It depends on your position on foreign aid or foreign intervention or how you really feel about that. Personally, as someone who's involved in the NGO world in development and is trying to be as critical as possible to achieve the most sustainable results possible, I think it definitely puts a damper on our reputation, because a lot of Canadian NGOs who receive money, a lot of the money from this overseas development assistance fund, they are going to have their funds cut, and it limits their abilities to implement programs or continue programs. And I mean, if you look at federal budget cuts, it does the same thing all around. It does the same thing in our own communities. You mentioned working with immigrants and refugees. These budget cuts and the changes to immigration and refugee policy affect the programs that are offered to our own immigrant and refugee communities greatly. Programs are always being cut and changed and refunded and restructured, and it's sort of the same thing all around. So I think it has a general negative impact on our efforts towards social justice.
I want to thank everybody for coming. It's been a really, really interesting discussion. I'm glad I took Mohammad up on his invitation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Dane, Dan, Katelyn, and Jean-Claude, thank you very much for being a part of this. It was terrific. It really was. And thank you to the University of Windsor chapter of Engineers Without Borders and put it all together. And it wouldn't have worked as well as it did without all of you, so thank you. Good night.